Good afternoon, everyone, or good evening, and in this fading light, and welcome to the LawTech London Trends and Predictions 2021 discussion panel. I'm David Chaplin, editor of Computers and Law, the journal or magazine of the Society for Computers and Law, and I'm joined today by three experts in this area who will introduce themselves to the audience. First of all, you, Stacey.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for having me. My name's Stacey Sinclair. I am a partner at Fenwick Elliott, which is a law firm specializing in construction, energy, and infrastructure. And I am the head of technology and innovation there.
Okay, thank you, Stacey. Nick, over to you.
Hi, my name's Nick Watson, and I was formerly a web developer, and now I run a virtual datering company called Ruby Datum. And I also run another company called Legal Legends, and we help people with their user experience in technology and building kind of bespoke legal applications. That's as short as I can make it.
Okay, finally over to Jonathan.
Hello, David. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Jonathan Maas. I am an independent consultant working in legal IT and discovery. I've been in legal since 1745, so I've seen all the developments over those periods, those decades of IT in practice in law.
Okay, thanks a lot. And of course, welcome to everybody. There's lots of nice greetings coming through on the chat panel, so it's good to see you all here today. Just a quick word about the format. It's going to be an informal chat, but we do welcome some questions to come in from you, the audience. If you do want to send questions in, I'll try and weave those in to the discussion with our panelists as and when appropriate. We may also run a couple of polls as well to keep you interested. So keep an eye out for those. We would like to get your feedback and your thoughts on some of the issues of the day. So let's get started looking at some of the issues and trends in and what's been happening over the last year. Of course, this time last year, the pandemic was sort of unimaginable. Just getting the first glimpses of it, weren't we, I suppose? 1 year on, has the pandemic changed the priorities for legal tech? And are firms reining in or ramping up spending on technology? Has it had an effect on investment in those areas? Stacey, is that?
I have to say, spending as it was before. Our priorities are as they were before. I just think it's a lot easier now. I've been pretty, the opportunities. Obviously, it's unfortunate in the current environment, but have been really helpful for us in legal, not just legal technology, but technology in general. I think, but anything that increases our productivity or our efficiencies, our workflows. They always were a priority, and they certainly are a priority now, even more so for working from home, getting everybody together. Our clients need it, want it, and we obviously are focusing on them. So our spending, again, the same. I think it's probably easier now to make business cases and use cases for technology, which I really welcome. But
is that what's made it easier? Has it made it easier to push technology because of what's happened?
Well, I think you see, everyone sees how significant, how parts of your daily life it is now. If you want to work off your day job, you need it. So it does make my life a bit easier on that front.
And just still on that, have the staff, your employees, the workers you work with, are they more embracing technology a bit more because they've had to? They've had to.
Yeah. I think but we've got a nice mix. We had it before the pandemic started, but you've had to. Some have done it, more willing than others, but within 3 weeks we were, up and running. Of course, there were teething problems, as everyone I'm sure had. You had to survive. You had to get on, and we did the best we could. I was pretty proud of us, and we worked through that sort of initial learning phase, and now I'd like to think that we're in the refining phase and doing it better. And I wouldn't call that innovation. I'd just call that getting on with, that would have taken us, probably, 5 years. And that's been accelerated within the matter of weeks, which is just absolutely brilliant. Okay, it wasn't pretty at times, but it was, it's a good thing in the long run for us.
A bit later. Nick, Jonathan, have you got any thoughts to add on to that?
Sure. I'll let Jonathan go first.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much. The very word that was going through my head as Stacey was telling us how life was with her was acceleration. This was all going to happen anyway, but it was going to happen in the traditional law firm 5-decade period rather than a 5-week period. So I agree with everything that Stacey said. I think for all those reasons, for looking after your clients, for keeping the business going, for being able to earn an honest buck, for keeping your staff and your colleagues healthy and sane and involved. And I think that what we're now seeing over the past year, as all legal press, is how cyber has also accelerated its attacks. And law firms are particularly vulnerable and particularly interesting because of all the confidential information they hold. So I think that's going to, now that I would imagine that Stacey's firm, now they've settled down and are sort of twisting the dials the last little bit to get everything right, will probably be focusing on things like cyber once now the business is operating in this remote manner.
Absolutely, and I think you get more attention now with that as well than perhaps did previously. You're still going to get a little bit of resistance, but I think minds are more open now. The mindset's changed, and I think it's going to be easier to get further than we would have done previously.
Definitely, yeah.
I've got a kind of very, very varied experience to this, having worked with many law firms and owning a legal tech company that sells into law firms also. I found that COVID's essentially, like Jonathan said, it's an accelerator, it's an amplifier. Those firms that were making the transition into more technology have been able to do that easier. Some that may have been open to it before are more open to it. But what I've also seen, casting aside the whole working from home, remote working thing, and just focusing on the other aspects of technology, I've seen those more adverse to technology actually kind of cut all their tech budgets. I've seen people kind of burying their head in the sand saying, okay, it's just remote working now, let's forget all the other technology. So it's kind of accelerated it for some firms in that direction also. But those firms that are truly into the tech side of things and want to grow there, I've seen it amplify that and make it more possible as the kind of culture shift happens throughout the company.
I concur with that actually. Talking about suppliers to law firms, I've seen the same polarization. I've seen those organizations who see this rightly as a tremendous opportunity, like Fenwick Elliott, and those who are just battening down the hatches and avoiding doing anything other than the absolutely necessary and waiting for it all to blow over or hoping it will all blow over. So I think, yes, there is that polarization in the market generally, but thankfully for the Leviathan that is partnership, it's actually opened their eyes, or at least made them as receptive as Stacey has said. So, but I do agree with you as well, Nick. I'm straddling the fence quite nicely here.
I can see also, we've had, I absolutely agree. I've been really pleasantly surprised on some, with some, members of our firm and other firms where, historically they would do nothing unless they had been delivered, sort of a hard copy bundle. And, I'm helping them with e-bundles. Well, let's just get one started so I can get going. I can do it myself, or I can, we've got a little, some upskilling going on in other areas. And I've been really pleasantly surprised that some people have really taken to it. Others maybe less so, but they may not have been minded to anyway previously. So, yeah.
I think that's that. I can see that as well. Sorry to keep interrupting. I know I'm a terrible interrupter. But, I've seen, and I also welcome this. I've seen that the prevalence of video meetings like this and everyone sharing problems, that business has become a lot more personal. We're allowing our business people, our colleagues, the people on the other side in cases, into our homes, literally, like now. we're all very understanding if a dog barks or a child wanders across throwing cake at the window. I think business life has become a lot more personal, and therefore we are more inclined to help each other out in order for the greater good. I think there is a polarization in human nature as well. There are those who really want to be at the front of the queue and will jump on, stab and everything just to get in front. And there are the vast majority who only want to help and make things happen. And I think that's being reflected in business dealings and meetings. And I welcome that very much.
I mean, I've done some work over the last year with Professor Suskind on a remote courts project that we've been sort of trying to gather stuff together. And obviously the accelerator point. I mean, it has accelerated the use of technology in the courts, unbelievably so.
Yes.
But I also think your point about how it's made it more personal. I mean, it has lost a bit of formality, and I know some judges are slightly worried about the lack of formality in online hearings. But there again, others have welcomed it. They've welcomed the fact that they can be. There are two aspects. They've welcomed the fact they can be a bit more informal, a bit more human, and they've also welcomed the fact that now people can observe court hearings. I know this is slightly outside the sort of commercial world we're dealing with. They can observe court hearings from anywhere and are being allowed to do so. And the irony is that once they go back to in-person hearings a bit more, that transparency might actually be reduced again. It might be a window of opportunity.
I so hope not. There is so much that we can learn about doing business in a much more civilized, modern way that has been much needed in all industries, but in particular in law. And I would really hate that the skin that's risen up in response to the pinch does not elasticate itself and go back to how it was, nice and flat. I hope that we have good lessons learnt from this horrible pandemic and that we take those forward positively.
I think also, if I can just add, I think it's been really beneficial in some aspects for our clients. I think they're benefiting from it. If you have small hearings, if you have applications that can be done remotely, you don't have witnesses traveling around the world, you don't have those sorts of costs. There's a lot of benefit to having a sharp, quick. All right, the TCC, the Technology and Construction Court, I take the point. It's probably closer to business as usual than perhaps the family courts or the criminal courts. I completely appreciate there are very different issues that those courts are facing. But there's, there are some really fantastic benefits for our clients that would have cost more previously. So I really welcome that aspect as well, and they're really embracing it. Judges will, they will be, quick to tell you. I mean, it is a different experience. There are other constraints and other issues that one takes into account, but pros and cons, obviously.
Well, one great advantage for me is I've been running webinars for a long time, and I've tried to get judges involved to speak on a webinar. And I used to have fear and trepidation when I said, push this button. Now I don't. They can all join in. It's great to hear. Moving on to this, we've obviously been touching on working from home, and that's been the enormous change that has happened this year. What do you think the long-lasting impact of this has been? I mean, we've touched on it being more personal, perhaps. And also, as Stacey said, it's done a bit of a rush. What still needs to be done? You've touched on a couple of those issues. Cyber is maybe one for this to look at for this year. But what other issues? What are the issues that you're going to have to look at to make sure that working from home works, both now, while we're still in lockdown, and as we move back to, because what I'm assuming is going to be a hybrid model, in 6 months' time. How will that work, and what legal technology, what will the law firms have to do to adapt? Who wants to go first?
Sorry?
Who wants to go first? Nick?
I'm going to have to sit with that one a second, because my first response to that is I don't know. I'm going to reflect on it some more, if that's okay. And
I'm happy to have a shot and get the ball rolling. I think we need now, as Stacey said, you've done the implementation and now you're doing the tweaking. I think now we need to bed down issues of multiple non-work devices, shadow IT, that I imagine has absolutely mushroomed for all the obvious reasons in the pandemic. So personal phones, personal computers, work computers. There is an unpleasant lack of divide between these devices, in my opinion. I think we need to get our IT admin tightened up. Not me, I only work with myself. So I'm tightening up myself the whole time. But I think we need to try and introduce new employee policies that cater for confidentiality, that cater for eventualities of a breach, that cater for using shadow IT, IT that is not provided by your employer. I think that there are positives and things like, I think teams that are already geographically remote will become closer because people will be used to communicating by video connection. And so they'll probably have more regular meetings throughout the year rather than one expensive trip to a central location. I think although events have been clearly knocked on the head, in-person events have been knocked on the head, and we have yet to crack the person-to-person networking that's so good at these events, I think that event organizers are actually going to see a much higher attendance because more people can come from more places around the world by video connection. Those are my immediate knee-jerk thoughts to that question. Be very welcome to hear what Stacey and Nick have to say if Nick has cogitated enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think you highlight. Sorry, am I hearing an echo through someone's speaker? I think it might be yours, Jonathan, but I'm not sure.
From mine?
Yeah, I think I've got a bit of an echo. I can hear my own voice.
I don't know where that's coming from.
Definitely not me.
Okay. I can't hear it now, so good. It's resolved. Yeah, I think what you say about security is quite a prevalent point. It's a fine line to walk, and a good example is when people started flocking to Zoom, and then we started to hear of the security issues around Zoom.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that, I mean, you just need to look at the likes of DLA Piper a few years ago that had so much red tape to cut through around security that they didn't move away from XP, and then the whole company was held to ransom with an attack. I think we're realizing now that there is some middle ground between the two. As someone who's quite passionate about security, I've always said the weakest point is always the user. Social engineering is probably one of our biggest threats. And the fact that we're now out of that controlled kind of secure environment of the office where we can trust everyone around us. And for now, we're just locked into our own homes. But, as people want to start roaming about and being able to do this from anywhere, I think that's where policies become incredibly important.
Sorry, Nick, what do you mean by social engineering?
Basically, we have hackers that will kind of, for example, call up someone and pretend to be someone else, or they'll send fake emails or text messages, this kind of thing, to manipulate the user into performing certain actions.
Gotcha. Yeah, thank you.
So yeah. I mean, I would absolutely agree with all that. And I have to say, Jonathan, that term shadow IT, I hadn't even heard of it until about a year ago or something like that. It's just not, sorry, I should disclose. I mean, I am a lawyer, and that is my, that was my first day job, as it were. And so I can genuinely tell you that if there's a will, the lawyer will find the way. I mean, they have to. They have to get it done. They have to find you an answer. We want our clients, the best, that they are in our best interest, and they'll find a way. If our policy is not to stick a USB stick in your computer unless it's password protected, but the computer allows it, you're going to do it. And we squirrel, if allowed to, you'll squirrel away data anywhere you want to, in the cloud on this server and that, back folder over there. And of course you'll do it. If it's faster to move that data around, that's what you're going to do. Yeah. So shadow IT, absolutely something that we, definitely need to get on top of more. And, it's not, I absolutely don't fault the user at all, because, I was that person. I just want to get it done, and I want to get it done well. So I don't fault the user at all. I think we need to do more training, more education, so that our users know what tools they have available to do the job that they want to do. So, you'll come across people who never even, but no fault to themselves at all, but, they don't know how to merge a PDF together, or they don't know how to, Well, maybe e-signing is a bit more modern, so I don't want to fault anyone for that. But how to hyperlink something, or again, maybe that's the next step.
We all know that the lawyers only know a maximum of 20% of the 100% utility in Word, for instance. Excel is a complete rainstorm to them. Rain, not brain, rainstorm to them. They just, they're comfortable doing what they need to do within the constraints of the familiarity of getting it done quickly, because it's a familiar way of doing it. It's almost muscle memory. This is how I do it, and I do it that way because I do it quickly.
We might come on to that in just a minute, onto that issue. But what I'm hearing, which is interesting, is at the moment you're talking about not technological solutions, but management solutions. That's what's employee,
It's about the people. It's absolutely about the people, for sure.
That's what you've got to refine. It's not so much the technology you've got to refine. It's the people that you've got to refine. Training.
Twas ever thus.
That sort of thing.
And there has to be, that element of sympathy and empathy when doing so, because, you don't just, sledgehammer them with, all the best tools in the wonderful world. Obviously, they're not going to use it. But, they get there. And if you do it incrementally, if you do it, bit by bit, and,
slowly catch your monkey.
Yeah. And just the other day, somebody had an issue, somebody had an issue with Outlook. So I said, oh, did you know that you can get your Outlook by going onto office.com? And oh, by the way, whilst you're there, why don't you look at all the other apps we've got available? And so slowly they're starting to realize how they can access other things, access other software, programs, data in a different way. And, bit by bit. I mean, we're not a large law firm. I should also say, we're sort of I guess what I would call medium to small sized law firm, just under 100 people, so there's only so much resource available, or there's only so much. And we do rely a lot on our users to be proactive. I think we're really good at that, actually, but that's just my perspective.
I'm just at this point, I'm going to start a poll. We've got a poll here about, this will teach us something about whether people are going to go back to the office. So everybody in the audience, if you want to answer this poll, it's about, are you going to go back to the office after the pandemic ends? I'll leave that running for a little bit. Something you touched on that somebody's mentioned in the chat is also in the shadow IT, data and managing your data. Is that something you've still got to refine in this working from home and future hybrid thing? I mean, I imagine it is, but what are your experiences of that?
Well, I've just to chip in on this, because this is something that is challenging the discovery community, litigators, disclosure, and all that kind of stuff. Is this? I won't call it a tsunami, but all this working from home has created a whole heap of other sources of evidence that need to be considered and that need to be collected if they might contain relevant information to your dispute or your investigation or whatever. Might need to be collected forensically. So we're back in the Wild West in terms of the tech for collection in a forensic manner to be used in a court during a trial. There's Teams has just announced that you can do auto transcripts, and there are so many places and all these collaborative tools, Slack and Snapchat, that people are using in addition to the permitted methods of corresponding with their colleagues. There are so many other different places that need to be considered that it's leaving aside the cyber, leaving aside the hacking, leaving aside and I'm sure we'll come on to data analysis, which this would segue neatly into. There is just so much stuff of the same flowing around all over the place, multiplied by the number of devices, the number of avenues or channels, the number of people who access those same channels and have the same data. It's incredible.
I'd say data management probably sits right up there on what I'm doing on a daily basis, issues that we have to deal with as a firm. Data management is huge. And in construction, we have lots of it. We have drone footage, we have programs, we have AutoCAD files, construction. All right, you've got your old school site diaries, which you use to scan in, and all this other there's so much data in construction, so we see a huge amount. And I'm hearing myself. Apologies. If you can't do something in a particular location, 9 times out of 10, the user is going to copy it somewhere to where they can do it. So if they can't hyperlink a document in this platform, they're going to copy all that to somewhere else where they can sort it out. So those are the sort of data management issues that you have to be live to, depending on where you keep that sort of big data. And I would 100% agree with the disclosure issues that we face that Jonathan just mentioned as well.
Lawyers are like water, really. I mean, this was Bruce Lee's analogy. They won't try and go through a rock; they'll go round it, just like Stacey said. So you can't, if there's a millimeter of give to allow them to do something like what they want to do, they'll do it every time. The amount of times I've taken out my own credit card and bought something very expensive because I needed it to service a client, and then worried about getting the money back from that client or whatever later, because you just don't have the time, and it's usually late at night.
I'm going to give myself a shameless plug here, if that's right. So one of the reasons we started Legal Legends was purely because as we are selling Ruby Data into various firms, the word data silos was used quite frequently. And when we started to explore like the different options, we had various people like kind of asking us for a bit of help there. And what we came to realize is that there are platforms out there trying to solve everything, but it's really hard to be the best at every aspect of legal technology and build everything into one platform. And there's other kind of firms out there that are too small to offer integrations. Many law firms won't have their own development team or integration team. So we kind of set up the company to be that bridge between the two. Take a look at what tech law firms have, what they don't have, and try to build some like bespoke links in, like integrate the technology together, centralize where the data sits so we don't have, you know, the same document sitting on 5 different platforms. You don't have to download a like 2 terabyte PST file onto your desktop just to upload it to another platform, just to extract it in this one and then analyze it in this one. I mean, these things take so much time, and it would be great if the file sat in one location that could just flow between the platforms. So this is exactly why we started the company, because it's a bit of a mess out there.
Well, it is. That's because firms that aren't lucky enough to have the likes of Dr. Stacey there buy their tech organically. They don't do it at the same time. They don't have any kind of upgrade plans. A partner sees something that looks like it would be really sexy and impress clients and make them look good in their partnership, which is not a partnership. It's a loose cooperative of individuals. So they go and buy it. And then they throw it at IT and say, right, make that work for me. And they may not use it. If they do use it, great. And then someone in another department, maybe even in the office next door, does exactly the same thing with another piece of tech. Or a client who makes that tech has said, you really you're not using our stuff. You should buy our stuff. So to help impress the client, they'll buy the client's stuff, which is usually a very wrong decision. So it all develops organically, and nobody worries about the things working together. And Stacey said it's all about the user. The amount of times I've seen software bought by, say, time recording software, bought by the accounts department because it generates the right reports they need for management. They couldn't give 2 hoots about the user experience actually to record that time and how it works with the user. It's just good for them on their report. So it's a bugger's muddle. And recently I gave a presentation as part of an ILTA conference about the history of law firms and how they buy their tech and how that's now changing and stuff like that. But when you're dealing with that kind of historical problem, it really is a big problem that no one really wants to take control of, Nick. Okay. So it's brilliant that you've got that product.
I'll come on to a sort of related question here, but first of all, I'll just read out got the poll results. We can see that 60% said they're going to have a flexible arrangement, more time at home. 24% are going to have a flexible arrangement, but with more time in the office. 5% said they're going to go back to the office, and 9% said they're not going to go back to the office. So we're looking at a hybrid model, and we've got to work towards managing that hybrid model. But moving on from what you were just saying there, Jonathan, one of the things we've heard, and we were discussing this briefly in a sort of pre-talk, is going back to basics and making the most of what you've got. And Stacey sort of touched on this as well about teaching people how to use Outlook. Can you do this? Is this a trend, or is this been accelerated by remote working? Is it something that people should concentrate on instead of going and getting the new sexy piece of kit?
Most definitely. I think this is most prevalent in in-house legal. where their budgets are getting reduced and they're expected to do more with less and so on and so forth. And they're crying out for automating certain tasks and performing triage on frequent requests coming in from the business. And I say to them the whole time, look at what you already have. Look at what your business uses, maybe not in your department, and see if there's something already there that you could use to greater effect. Often, things are rebadged to sell to a different part of a market. So I gave the analogy yesterday of two sets of trainers that I had back in the day when I did things on the sports field. I had blue flash and green flash, one for squash and one for badminton. It was exactly the same trainer, just in different colours, but I bought each one because they said, this one's squash, that one's badminton. You didn't need to. So the more, tech is just tech, and I don't like legal tech. It's just technology. And the more that people can get away from this is specific to legal, and the more they can look at what they already have in their existing stack and make proper use of it, the better. And especially now in these days where budgets are tight, where people are either spending or not doing a thing. And if you're not doing a thing, then you have to look around your house. If you have no food in the house, you've got to look around it to see if there's anything you could possibly get away with eating.
And it's amazing what you can find. It's absolutely amazing what you can find. Yeah, you might need, like, say if you take our size of firm, you might need somebody to help you, like realize the full potential of it, possibly. But absolutely, and it's just amazing what you can find. And as well get rid of, because you've realized you bought something 5 years ago that no one's even knew about, that you're still paying a subscription for. But I absolutely agree with the sorry, and I just butted in there, Jonathan.
I can take it.
My serious apologies. But absolutely, I totally agree with its technology, and that is really what is advancing. That's what's making us faster, more efficient, more productive. If we go for if you want to classify something as a legal technology, if we go for something that you might classify that into it, we're very, very specific that it's absolutely going to, the use cases there, we can already see the benefit. It's a no-brainer. I'm very good for going for those no-brainers. Something that will sell itself internally. Like, I know that it will just spread like wildfire throughout the firm. We've had one or two things that we've used, and you can just tell, and one of them I wouldn't even call, a legal technology. It's just a massively brilliant search engine. But if someone hears about it and uses it, and they're like, oh yeah, just go use such and such, I don't even have to like show it to the firm, and if they can pick it up and just use it, it sort of spreads by word of mouth. And those are the ones that really work well for us. And they're not necessarily legal technologies. One might be, but yeah, I absolutely agree.
I think to blow Nick's trumpet before he does himself, he wrote a very good article, very recently on the user experience in software and being empathetic. And if the user doesn't want to use it, they're not going to use it. And all the points you've been making, Stacey, Nick enumerates in a very good article.
It's on Artificial Lawyer.
On Artificial Lawyers. When was it published? Just so for the audience.
I think it was 2 or 3 days ago. It's very recent anyway. It should be the latest articles.
Or it's in my bong, of course.
Yeah.
Everyone should absolutely read on a daily basis to keep up to speed.
Just kind of moving on from echoing on from what Stacey said, I think it's really important that users should be able to just pick up technology and use it. I think when AI was a hot topic, maybe a couple of years ago, I mean, it still is to a degree, but it was a big buzzword back then. There was a lot of AI tools kind of coming into the market and showing really weighted, impressive demos to firms. And the firms would then adopt the technology and then realize they need a little bit of understanding into how machine learning works and things to get things working for their law firm. But what's not being considered is that every single law firm is very different. It's got different processes, people, types of case, like content in documents, clients. It did require a degree of learning and expertise to actually get that technology into the firm and off the ground. So a lot of it, a couple of years later, was dropped. A few days ago. Yeah. I think a lot of trust was lost in AI technology at the time as well. And I think, a bit of reluctance to adopt it. I actually saw a demo of a really good product the other day called Della AI. And I was so blown away by their approach to it, because the user interface was just absolutely incredible. Like as I saw them move through the system, it was it just presented to you like, this is what you need to click next, and it enabled the user to teach the system, but without any kind of understanding into the technical side of it, really. And I think that's the way we're going also, with technology. I think the lawyer just needs to be able to pick it up and use it. I've heard legal tech companies or tech companies say, "Oh, we've got an impressive support team. We're available on hand if you need to use it." But I've always said we shouldn't have to have such a big support team. I mean, users should be able to serve themselves with the technology. They shouldn't have to ask where a button is, where a menu is. They should be able to just see where it is and be able to perform the actions they want.
I agree, absolutely. I don't think AI has had its day yet. I think what has had its day is the enormous hype by the salespeople within the AI companies. I think AI is technology generally is incredibly complicated for someone who's not interested in it, nor has that as their in their job title. So your average lawyer, they just want to know that their lives are going to be easier and faster, and they can bill lots of money and get the partners off their backs. Simple. I think that there was so much hype around AI that Tracy mentioned a little bit earlier about if you've got a use case, it kind of sells itself. The problem with AI is that it doesn't have a use case, not AI. If you make a use case, take a bit of AI and create a workflow that solves a problem that a particular type of person faces on a regular basis, and they can just press the green button to make it happen, and it makes it happen, they'll buy it. But if you just say, "Oh, anything you want to do, just get AI and you can make it do anything," then no one's going to buy that, because they can't comprehend what anything is. And then all the AI people seem to hook onto contract review and LIBOR and all that kind of stuff, and they suddenly had a use case. And that was thrust hard down that particular route within legal, and everyone else was kind of forgotten. Stacey, she's using her AI in a way that makes sense to her firm. It's offering something that they couldn't do easily, if at all, before, which is brilliant. But if you just get AI, it's going to end up on the floor, because if you don't have, as you said, what are being called data scientists to help you understand how you can use it to make sense of what you've got or what you're getting, then it's just going to sit there and gather dust.
A couple of things on AI then, Jonathan. Looking forward, I mean, you say there's been a bit of a hype cycle, obviously, we'll go through the hype cycle thing of AI. In the next year, where will it be successful, if at all? And what particular types? I mean, you mentioned document review is obviously where it seems to be at the moment. Is there anywhere else it could sort of find its way? The other thing is, does anybody have any concerns about any ethical issues with the use of AI, not knowing exactly what the output might be? I mean, it depends on what circumstances you're using it, but are there any concerns? And will there be any requirements for training and upskilling the people working on these systems to understand that?
I'm just going to say one thing, and then I'll shut up, because I've been talking a lot, and I know that these two have a lot to say as well. But it's not just the output; it's also the input.
Yeah,
you have to understand the input, and we'll have opinions about what you need to do to get good input, clear water, not dirty water. But anyway, I'll shut up now.
Could I say a couple of things?
Yeah, certainly, go ahead.
So I think the big trend we'll see around, a couple of trends around AI. Firstly, this move away from AI as a way to kind of automate things, and towards a way to empower users. So rather than try to do all the kind of due diligence for them, perhaps have AI as almost as a power suit, in the same way as you start typing things into Google, it suggests things for you. So it enables the lawyer to just do their job easier rather than for them, and then correct the mistakes. The other area I think will be around security. I think there'll be a lot of AI brought in that can kind of monitor user actions, monitor their habits, how they're using various pieces of technology, and be able to spot patterns that differentiate from the norm, and then flag them up to IT admins, especially with working when everyone's working from home as well. I think
I think you'll get privacy pushback on that.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. I was going to both privacy and just employee rights.
It's like intrusion and all that kind of stuff. Yes.
Sure. I mean, it's the great thing about AI is you don't have to necessarily have it feeding back to the mothership. It can sit on the computer and just advise users. It doesn't have to send that data off anywhere.
And can be anonymized. It's the data and the actions that are important, not the individual's identity.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's various kind of home camera systems, for example, that analyze your kind of movement around the house, and then if something suspicious happens, it will flag it to you. It doesn't necessarily go to an external center that monitors it all. I mean, there's a lot to consider there, a lot of hurdles, but I do think that that's going to be a very booming industry. Maybe this year, maybe next, but it's certainly coming.
I think I don't have much to add to that, to be honest, but I would say that I do appreciate when companies say, this is not AI, this is machine learning, or this is what it is. It's, it actually, we've built this, but it's not actually using AI. And rather than selling you something that it's not, because and we've bought stuff like that, and they're very, very upfront to say, this is not AI. We actually use lawyers to do X, Y, and Z. We do the computer to do X, Y, and Z, and this is the way it works. And having that transparency is really helpful for myself, because when people get nervous about AI, I can tell them, actually, this isn't, but this might be over here. And it's a lot easier to understand it in that way. I mean, even a number of years ago when we got, there's a couple of products out there that do this, but it's a Word add-on that's basically very clever. It links into case law and tells you if you've got your case citation wrong. It's basically glorified Word. But our lawyers were like, oh gosh, is it going to change my document? It can't possibly change my document. I don't want it to change anything. But if you explain it to them, that they're actually just pointing it out to you, and then you can accept or reject. So having an understanding of how something works is very helpful for so many reasons in transparency. But obviously, there's that element to it. So I can see these issues of the ethical issues and all these things are on the rise that are so important to getting it right and embedding it when it gets to that point.
Yeah, I agree that it really helps to explain why something needs to be done in a certain way, so that people, in particular, back to the policies in particular, so people can understand the results, the outcome of them not doing that, or the risk of them not doing that, and the displeasure of their partnership if they decide to go against the policy. But there is an interesting deployment of AI in my area of litigation, which is a company that is working on the technology, the software, to enable, this is for litigation funding. They're working on software that would look at the matters in a case that is requesting funding, and they would perform triage and work out the likelihood of it succeeding based on the matters, the parties, the jurisdiction, the values, the court, all that kind of stuff. That will be absolutely fascinating. That will have many, many implications on how law firms approach matters, on how funders approach matters, on how open the courts are to this. And indeed, I think AI is going to have a tremendous impact, positive impact, on access to justice.
In what way? Sorry.
Well, I would hope, and again, you asked about what might happen. I would hope that AI would make. I read a very depressing book, a very well written but very depressing book quite recently, which involved a couple who had a B&B in Wales that was foreclosed on simply because they loaned some money to a friend who then they borrowed some money from a friend who then turned on them, and they found at the last minute a document that would prove their innocence. And before they filed it at court, and they still lost everything they owned. They were turned out on the street simply because they didn't get it in within the 48-day or 26-day deadline required by the court. So even though they were completely innocent, they lost everything, and their children lost everything. So I think the more that the necessary but arcane and somewhat difficult to find procedure around going to law can be improved by AI and made simpler. If we can't make the process simpler for the reasons that it's developed like this as safety for everybody concerned, then we must be able to interpret it in a way that the average person can understand and can benefit from, rather than have to not only win their case, but also understand the entire white book or green book of civil procedure or criminal procedure if they're acting for themselves because they can't afford their own legal representation. So I think AI has a lot to do there in simplifying not just legal process and procedure, but in simplifying ways in which the person on the Clapham omnibus conducts their real estate, their conveyancing or probate. You know, there are places where technology like Bitcoin and AI and things like that can actually make these laborious, time-consuming and very confusing processes so much easier for all of us. And I think that's a big place where AI and all sorts of tech, like your thing you're doing with Richard Susskind on the online courts. I mean, these are all tremendous steps forward for the common person.
Yeah, I'm talking about AI in that context. In India, we had a conference to launch this online.
Tremendous backlog in the courts there.
They are trying to use all of their the cases coming through to them in their courts as a huge database to identify whether the log jams or what kind of cases are the ones that are causing enormous log jams they have in civil litigation in India. It's early stages, but I think that's where they're trying to hit.
Well, that's an interesting thing there. That's where we're watching right now in America. Ross Intel AI against Westlaw.
Yeah. Where are we with that? Interesting.
I think we're still in. I don't know, but I think we're still in the kind of opening stages, saber rattling, exchanging vituperative documents with each other and stuff like that.
Okay.
I think.
Okay. Well, I can see the time's moving on. Let's come to another more general question. Let's have a look forward to the to 2021. Before I do that, just a very quick question for Stacey. Somebody asked, what was the name? I was going to ask this at the time, but it passed by. What was the name of the good search engine for lawyers?
It's AFI. AFI, and if you use it, it has different applications. We use it for a particular way, but it really depends on where your data is. So you may not need it, you may need it, but it's really intelligent, it's really fast. But it depends on where your data is. I would suggest, for us, it was a no-brainer. We use it a lot for early case assessment. We use it a lot for analyzing data, pre-disclosure type of activities. Yeah.
What makes it so good? What particularly makes it so good?
It's like searching, like you're shopping online for you've got the filters. It's so quick. It returns anything. The key actually also is you can connect data silos. So if you've got some data over here, some data in Azure, some data in Net Documents, you can connect up those data silos and search across them. It's not for everyone. It really depends on where your data is, how you work, what type of data you're trying to, not necessarily what type of data you're trying to search, but the amount of data. I mean, as I mentioned previously in construction, we'll get, so many weird and wonderful, massive amounts of data. And it can be quite helpful. It's not going to be an answer to everything, but yeah, that's what it is. Right, and AP is a company, not the product itself.
How's it spelled?
AYFIE. They'll love me for this.
Yes, they will. They will.
We've done an integration with them also.
I'll send them the recording.
Yeah, and they're nice people as well.
Yes, they are.
Okay, I hope they're listening in. Okay, what's the one thing you'd like to see more of in the legal tech world in 2021?
There was a pandemic in 1921 as well. It's a cyclical thing every century about this time.
Yeah.
Well, we're not that far advanced, actually, in legal since then.
So what would you like to see more of in 2021?
For me, quite simply, a better understanding of what technology can do and the application of it. I'm sick to death of telling lawyers that it can really help. It's not a problem. Your screen is not there to collect post-its. It's there to turn on and actually help you in your day. So I would like to see a growing number of people who can help, people like me and Stacey and Nick, people who can help those who don't want to or can't get it, to see the light. Evangelists, people who can save money and make solutions and positive outcomes for lawyers and show them exactly what the heck they can do with what they've got. And as Tracy said, help focus them, if they haven't got it, on what would really help them do what they need to do. So solve practical problems rather than just sell hype.
So is that a matter of the suppliers doing that, or is that a matter of
everybody
in law firms?
Everybody. Yeah, it's a big maturity, time warp, step leap thing.
Yeah. I mean, I hope to come on from this. I do remember years ago I was working with a legal aid management software firm. So small firms was going into, and there were these people getting in when contracting came in for criminal lawyers. Maybe the audience won't remember this, that you had to start using computers to actually get some legal aid out of the legal aid board. And did go in and do some training, and there was a computer sitting there still in its box. They hadn't got it out, but when they expected to come along and train them on this software. So I thought we'd moved on from that, but obviously you're thinking that there's still people out there who don't.
It's not their fault. They've been brought up to look backwards, to work on precedent and what has happened rather than what can happen. They're not taught at law school to be commercial, to be technically aware. It is not a requirement, and it still isn't a requirement. And I think fundamentally, we need to accept the fact that they are mere children in this world of tech and business, and we need to treat them that way in an encouraging and positive way and help them step up and get into the long trousers and become grown-ups in this world. That won't happen overnight, and they shouldn't be penalized for not getting it. Some of them just won't ever get it. That's fine. That's human. You know, my sister-in-law is convinced every time she walks in a room, she turns off all the computers because of the stuff she emits from her head. Maybe she does, but that's, it's what happens, so I have to deal with it.
And sorry to butt in, but it's quite encouraging, the sort of next generation of young lawyers, though. If we get a new young lawyer, they might be so why are we using this again? Because elsewhere, it's nice that they'll help to push the game, the initiative, as it were, because they want to do their job faster and better, and they've seen something elsewhere that they know, can I just download this? Can I, do it? And I think that's quite encouraging on that front.
Mm. We've had a comment from one of the audience saying, yes, I think lawyers have made a change their thinking towards the future of law enormously in the last 5 years. So I think that chimes with what you're saying there, Stacey. Nick, go on. Have you got anything?
There's one thing I'd love to see is that's less focus on the technology to kind of improve efficiency, and more, for the lawyers, and more technology to kind of interfacing with their clients and users. For example, allowing their clients to self-serve a bit more, and increasing the transparency, providing a dashboard where they can see their invoices, their matters, outstanding documents, what they need to review, just a lot more engagement, transparency, and the ability to kind of, for example, if you want a contract such as an NDA creating it, could ask the client some questions, generate one, and then have the lawyer look over it rather than go straight to the lawyer. More technology in that kind of atmosphere would be great.
We've had that technology since the 90s. Things like hot docs that will do exactly that.
Yeah,
I remember hot docs, actually. I love that name. I would say on that front, Nick, I think it's brilliant, actually, because a lot of initiatives are coming from clients. Clients want value added. How many times have I filled out a tender? How are you going to add value to the service that you provide to us? I think it's brilliant because clients are starting to demand how are you using And they won't necessarily, no, they will say, how are you using technology to deliver us a better service, better value, i.e. a cheaper bill. But it is not always the case, because, they are quite interested in, so what do you do internally that helps how you advise us? So this dispute you must have dealt with ages. How does it result? Or what do you find? What are the analytics around this? And you get some very brilliant, savvy clients, and it's lovely to see them pushing. They want this, and that of course is going to push us to make sure that we have, the best, whatever it might be, to deliver that. Obviously, we're very cautious in certain areas, but I think it's the client initiative and the client-driven requests is fantastic, really.
And are you seeing more and more of that? It is, and you expect to see more of that in 2021 as well. I think so.
And even there's another, I suppose. And say you get a larger client who has a panel of law firms. They're gonna want you to collaborate with each other. They're gonna want to see that same, client portal experience, so that they're not logging into 5 different, platforms. They want, them to be their panel law firms to collaborate, to work together, in this, in the same sort of fashion. There's a lot. There's that. I can see that being. We already have seen it, but I can see that growing in 2021 for sure.
Is that something you're working on? Is it collaborate? Cross-client collaboration, let's call it, or a cross-firm collaboration for their clients.
Yeah, yes, it does, absolutely. Because that's going to help that client. If they work with 5, 6, 7, 8 law firms, they don't want to do it different ways. And similarly, you're seeing a rise of clients they want your bill presented to them in a particular way, i.e. the data is hoovered up into their system from all of their different suppliers and lawyers and whoever it might be. So you're needing to get on board with their technology. So you've got to be able to interface with their billing system. It's not our billing system. We have to integrate with their billing system. And you need to be alive to that and make sure your systems are flexible enough and that you're open, to it. Obviously, there's limitations, and you can only go so far in certain areas. But absolutely a lot of that.
Yeah, and I think that's the law firm's advantage as well, because the more that you can get your hooks into your client, the less likely they are to break away and go somewhere else entirely different. They would be more prepared to sit down and discuss issues with you than just flounce off and instruct another firm, because it is technically much more difficult for them to do when you're so connected.
Absolutely.
Final question then to discuss as we're running out of time. Is there anything genuinely new and exciting out there that's going to start to come in 2021? I mean, obviously these things do run, so they take a while to get round to everybody. But is there anything genuinely new and exciting in legal tech out there? I'll give you one example to start off with, perhaps VR in video conference meetings to make it a bit more immersive and virtual build. I've read about this is where people think they're going. And is there anything else out there?
May I?
Yes, certainly, John. Go ahead.
Thank you. That's exactly my thinking. I've long seen a problem with AI or machine, whatever it is, long seen a problem with the automation of some of the more basic tasks in legal. Means that the traditional way of learning your profession as a kind of apprentice when you join a law firm as a trainee or an article clerk, and as you progress up the ladder and gain more experience, traditionally that experience has been garnered by following people who already know what they're doing and are very experienced, and doing repetitive, boring legal tasks that immerse you in your area of law. If those go, rightly so, I think, then I see a vast gap for that training and learning process. It won't be there anymore. So I see things like VR as being a really good replacement. So you can not just have a classroom experience, you can have that kind of apprenticeship virtually. You're still having the experience, you're just not actually getting your fingers covered in dust because you're wading through 30-year-old documents. So I think that is a way in which we could plug certain gaps. And in addition, we talked about attending events and not being in person and therefore missing out on the networking thing. I went to late last year, a most fantastic online event where everybody had their own avatars, which they could customize. It had a room, areas where you could wander around from one room to another. You could hop on a speedboat because you're on an island and go speeding around the island for a bit. You could kick a football around as an avatar. And it was the best way that I have actually walked up online to people and chatted and met old friends that I couldn't network with at the moment. So I think there is room here for supplementing the ways that humans like to do things but can't do anymore or are unable to do using technology like VR. Yes.
Okay, Nick, anything?
What's hot and exciting for me may not be for the majority. I mean, like things like VR, yeah, they sound pretty flashy, I think. I've got a bit of a different opinion from Jonathan. I mean, I don't think I'd ever go to a event where I'm a 3D character and walking up to people. I mean, it's just not my scene at all. And I think we may be a long way off that being the norm. I've
been meaning to do something like that, to go to one of these just to see how it works. So
it was really good. It wasn't the same. What
was the event? Somebody's asking.
It was I think it was on eDiscovery Day, a thing in the States. It was organised by ACEDS, and I think an organisation, Association of Certified eDiscovery Specialists in America, which has chapters in the UK and around the world. And they had their virtual conference. They had stages at which avatars were standing and talking, and PowerPoints were being managed within the application. You were online, so you could just have a tab open in your browser and dip in and out according to what was going on. You could pre-arrange or arrange there and then with a friend that you haven't actually seen for a year, but you're talking to as if you're standing physically in front of them when it's just your avatar. And you can create your avatar to look like you are with a full head of dark brown hair and flowing locks and no glasses and clean shaven and that kind of stuff. So there is an element of stalking in there, yes, but it's an environment that's kind of safe because it's under the banner of a professional organization, and the people in there are professionals, all of whom know a fair number of people already in there. So it was the best. I've done a number of these virtual conferences as an attendee, and this was by far the best experience of all of them.
Okay, sorry, I interrupted you there, Nick. Did you want to finish off what you were going to say?
Yeah, I think I interrupted him. Sorry.
I just have a kind of gut feeling that these things are fun for a very fleeting moment, but they will die off, quite quickly. And I feel like very soon, I mean, I don't know how long this pandemic is going to go on for. I mean, it could be a month, it could be years. But either way, I think I, for one, am certainly missing that in-person human interaction. And I feel many others will be as well. I mean, in the room with people. And as soon as that happens, and we're able to go to events again, I think this kind of VR technology will quickly die off, at least for a couple of years or so, until we're able to kind of, find purposes for it elsewhere.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, we've had a huge success at a webinar series that we started last May or April, May, whatever it was, and huge success. But we find there's we've obviously been analyzing how many how long, what's the best sort of time for a webinar, I mean, how long should it be, is there webinar burnout? But we're consistently getting a lot more people than we ever would have attended in the sort of physical conference room or seminar room than we would have ever got. So obviously that's something that's very important to us, but at the same time there are sort of topics that lend themselves to being longer than that 45 minutes or hour. And actually, you need a bit more engagement to make that particular topic work. So we're trying to find ways where we customize the topic that we know that our clients or audience wants to hear about. But at the same time, we still have things where actually that would really lend itself to being a really good workshop or whatever it might be. Not an hour, but actually that's really a 2-hour thing that people, would be really pleased about. Could that work in the sort of VR sort of avatar type? Probably yes. Will we get there in the 2021 Fenekele in the avatar world? I don't quite know. I'd love to, but I know we would welcome some events that were in person, so that we could deliver some of the content that we know that people are sort of yearning for.
Okay, at that point, we're over our hour, so people are going to have to go and start have dinner and things like that. The message I take from this was actually, it's not the technology that we've got to look at in 2021, it's the people and or your avatar. So I think people first is the message perhaps for 2021, to get people on board with the technology and feeling confident and feeling secure in both senses of the word, I think. So thank you all to the panel for today's event. Thank you all to the audience. We've had lots of questions coming through. Sorry if we couldn't get through to all of them. There is a recording going to be made available, and I think that will be circulated to everybody who's signed in, but I'll leave that to LawTech London. But thanks for your time, and yes, let's all hope we have a safe 2021. Thank you all.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.